Hey, this is Dave from metalepidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review. So for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album 2020 from Pittsburgh duo Zombi. So I realised that this isn't technically a metal album.
You shut your mouth, you slut.
And for the most part, our reviews tend to lean on the heavier side of things.
Yes.
I also realised that I've made Duncan review some albums that he may or may not have been particularly looking forward to.
I don't know what you mean, Dave.
But he did it anyway, and I like to think that deep down, he is a technical death metal fan, really.
I mean, yeah, occasionally. Hey, if I like 1 out of the 10 that you give me, that's 10%, Dave. That's nothing
10%.
to sniff at.
I'll take that 10%. So when this came in for review, I instantly thought this is going to be right up Duncan Street. I mean, this band takes its name from the Italian title of George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead.
Yep.
Duncan does a horror podcast, for those of you that don't know.
So he may have seen that movie before.
Have you seen that movie?
I think I own 4 cuts of Dawn of the Dead.
That does not surprise me at all.
Including a cut that's purely in Italian, which is the zombie cut, so to speak. And it's still in its shrink wrap because I'm petrified to open. I've actually also shelled out £80 on the remaster, 4K UHD remaster, which is coming out in October already, which I think has, out with that 4K restoration, basically had all the special features on and other things. So it's like purely vanity. So like purely vanity, and the fact that I'm not spending money on anything because I'm locked down. So
yeah.
Like that £80 seems reasonable for a movie that I own 4 copies of. Fucking arsehole, honestly.
So Zombie are about to release album number 6 on Relapse Records, a label they've been with from their first full-length album, which is pretty amazing considering Relapse predominantly put out heavy as balls releases. Like the roster is the who's who of heaviness, like Dying Fetus, Monolord, Obituary, Full of Hell, Gatekeeper, like the list goes on. Yes, exactly. But as you say, there are also a kind of handful of artists on Relapse that aren't necessarily metal. Mm-hmm. Author and Punisher being an example of that.
Although Author and Punisher are heavy as fuck. So.
Yeah, they've got more industrial. Yeah, Survive, is it Merker? Is that how you pronounce that? I'm not entirely sure.
I mean, Survive is like Survive must have raked them in so much fucking money. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Off the back, it's Survive are the guys that did Stranger Things, isn't it? Am I getting that wrong?
I don't know.
I'll double check. But I'm sure Survive are the guys that wrote the theme song to Stranger Things. So if that is the case, like Relapse are bathing in that money.
Yeah, and they've got Bran from Mastodon's new project Arcadia as well, which is
weren't Mastodon on Relapse? Or have I just made that up?
They might have been actually.
I think they were back in the day. So I think Relapse might be. They might have this track record actually. That's probably why they have all these kind of niche, really, really heavy bands on there, because they've had a couple of bands that went on to do fucking gangbusters.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then we have Zombie, a duo that have kind of carved their own niche in underground music. Their sound is a kind of amalgamation of progressive electronic rock, post-rock blended with like epic soundscapes and atmosphere.
Yes, that's true, and I can confirm after doing a bit of internet sleuthing, Survive are the band that wrote the theme song, and basically the soundtracks to all the Stranger Things. So once again, here comes the money!
Show me the money. So their Zombie sound it's all achieved through like I know they used to use a lot of electronic bass, but I think they do use a bit of kind of acoustic bass now as well, or bin bass, guitar, drums, and a collection of synths as well, which I'm sure excites you very much.
I don't know what you mean, Dave. What are these synths of which you speak?
And aside from being on Relapse, their sound seems to draw a lot of metal fans. As well as obviously fans of rock, electronic music, and horror fans as well. There's huge crossover with this band, and we've seen more of that happening recently with the kind of rise of the old synthwave.
Yes, sir.
And artists like Ghost and Perturbator. I mean, in fact, that Perturbator gig that we went to was a perfect example. It was just full of metal fans.
It was. There's always been that weird crossover point, though.
Yeah.
Like I know many people I grew up with that were fucking super into heavy music that now listen to electronic and synthwave. And weirdly, I was the reverse of that. Like before getting into metal, I predominantly listened to kind of dance music, rave and techno. So and it just wasn't extreme enough for me. And then I found metal, and I was like, this is the back scratcher to scratch that itch I can't reach. You find your thing, and I've never really taken a foot out of there. Zombi are a weird. Like, I went to see Goblin. So Goblin are a kind of prog rock, for all intents and purposes, band who have scored a lot of horror movies, tons of horror movies.
Yeah. And
when I went to see them, there was a few older Goblin fans, proggy fans, but the majority of people there were horror fans and metal fans as well. And there was that crossover there. And Zombie actually sound like a modern version of Goblin. They're doing it like maybe less kind of on the proggy side, but certainly in terms of the way they form their songs and instrumentation that's used, it's basically in that realm. You pick any one of these songs really and put them over a kind of, Walking Dead or Zombie-esque script in the background acting, and it would fit fucking perfect. You know what I mean? It's not a stretch out with, and I think that's maybe to their benefit. Like the big thing for me listening to this is there'd already been 3 songs released before the review copy came in. So, and I'm a fan of this group. I had the chance to go and see them. It was either last year or the year before, and for whatever reason I had to cancel at the last minute. And I had a couple of friends that went, and their pictures looked amazing. It looked like the greatest fucking night ever. And of course, I got extreme cases of FOMO, Dave. You know all about that. I've been eagerly anticipating this new release. And to be honest, I think this is up there amongst the best the band have ever done. I think the production sounds like weirdly modern, but also strangely authentic to an era. There's a kind of warm, almost analog feel of all this digital, and I kind of love that. But I think what they have really nailed this time is the concept of making these songs not only appear like tracks from a composition for a movie, but also like songs. There's a real sense of structure here which fits into a confine of really good songwriting, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And there's movements within the music that I think show the band really just feeling the music out, getting into the zone and branching out, whether it's Earth Scraper, which is the second song, which also has the greatest name for a fucking song ever. Like Earth Scraper is what I want put on my tombstone just to freak people out. He's what? Or something like Mountain Ranges, or even the closing song, which I mean is the longest one there, which is Thought Forms. There are waves of what I love about them is like just when you're getting into the rock element out of nowhere, bam! Here comes a fucking big synth section. And it's going to floor you, but the synths do stuff which are unexpected as well. A lot of bands that do this sort of stuff, the synth basically follows what the guitar does or vice versa. That's not what they're doing here. Like, you can have almost like counterpoint melodies playing off the synth, which I think make up for the fact there are no vocals. So if you're going to have synths and you're going to have guitars and you're not going to have vocalists, something needs to be driving the melody here, and it can't be 2 instruments essentially playing the same thing. Zombie have done well not to do that, and in the past they've kind of fallen into some of those trappings that some of the other groups of their ilk I think sometimes fall into. So What did you make of it? Because like obviously I am a fan, right?
Yeah.
So I have my fan bias swinging in with me here on this review. Had you listened to any Zombie before this? And if so, what did you think of this? And if not, what did you think of this?
I hadn't really listened to any of their stuff before. I'd heard the name being mentioned many a time, but I hadn't really listened to any of their previous material up until this. But I did obviously a little bit of research and stuff online just to see who they were, what they did, and I thought it was quite interesting because like you mentioned like horror soundtracks and stuff, but this is something that these guys specialise in because Steve Moore, one of the guys from Zombie in particular, has worked on a ton of movie soundtracks, like out with Zombie. If you've seen movies like, and you'll have seen all these, Duncan, but you've seen like VFW, Bliss, or even The Guest even, then you'll have likely heard some of his work. And I think that's one of the big differences here between some of the kind of newer, like up and coming artists in a band like Zombie. These guys have a ton of experience and incredible chops, like both from a kind of playing point of view and songwriting, where many of these kind of newer artists and bands lack that kind of intuition that only comes with experience, and you can hear that in spades on this release. Everything is so well executed, from like the instrumentation to the production, as you say. As I mentioned, I'm not someone that usually kind of regular sits and listens to movie soundtracks or scores. Occasionally I will, depend on the movie, but
it's Rocky IV, isn't it? Over and over and over again.
Rocky IV, Rockstar, yeah, the usual. But I actually found this really easy to listen to because, as you said, like there are moments on this album that feel like tonally they would work in a movie scene, but there's also tracks on here that completely work as individual songs. They're instrumental, but there's so many other elements that, as you say, I didn't really miss vocals at all. That opening track would pretty much work in any 80s movie about fast cars or fighter pilots, like easily. Like everything on the
You're the best around.
Everything was ticked on the checklist for me for that first track, and they could easily have churned out an album of epic 80s bangers and I would have listened to it and loved it, but instead they kind of give you so much more. I felt like it kind of takes you on a bit of a journey, this one, kind of filled with different tones and textures and dynamics, whether it's like the more kind of sinister character on tracks like No Damage or Family Man, or the more kind of proggy kind of soundscape on XYZT, or even like the hypnotic synth-laden vibes on Thought Forms that closes the album. I think like whatever your preference, Zombie give you like a kind of wealth of styles to choose from, but it never feels like confused or like foundationless. It's all there for a reason, and
it flows really well.
Yeah, it does. Unsurprisingly, it sounds very seasoned. It's funny actually because you recently recommended I check out the new Long Distance Calling album.
Yeah, that's right.
How Do We Want to Live, I think it was called. And although they probably lean even more into the kind of prog rock side of things, but I did pick up little kind of similarities between the two bands. It's funny, I think it's just because that one was still quite fresh in my memory that I was hearing little things like, oh yeah, that's kind of similar to that. But yeah, I actually quite enjoyed this album, much more than I thought I was going to. It's probably not an album that I would play like every day. For me, it's not that kind of type of album. It's more when the mood strikes, it'll kind of fulfill a kind of want for something that's not too heavy, but it's got a lot of substance to it. You still get that kind of feel of a prog rock band, but it's got that atmosphere to it. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. Yeah. Rating wise, what you thinking?
So that, like, once again, the bias is here. But I do genuinely really like this one. To me, this one is as it stands just now, it's a 4.5. I think it's like maybe the best thing they've done since like their maybe even their second album, which I recommend if you're in the Zombie mood now, go back and troll through. They've got some really eclectic sounding stuff. I mean, it's always difficult to give an album like this a 5, because there are just elements that don't necessarily equate themselves to. I mean, there are certain stylistic choices here which totally work for me. There's some stylistic choices which are great for the song, which are maybe not necessarily aimed at my attention. And that's nothing to do with the songwriting or the production or anything. It's more just that particular song maybe doesn't grab me the same way as another song grabs me. So yeah, 4.5 feels right to me. If I had to guess, I would say you're a 4, Dave. I can see it in your eyes. You've got 4 screaming at you.
I am a 4.
I knew it.
I would go 4 out of 5 on this one for me. An enjoyable album, and if you're a fan of any of the kind of styles that we've mentioned in the review, then definitely give this a listen. It drops on July 17th, I think. Did I say 17th?
Yes.
July 17th on Relapse Records. So give that one a listen when it comes out. If you want to check out the band, they are on the old Facebook, which you can find online, which is facebook.com/zombie band. So it's ZOMBI.
Yep.
Zombie band.
Yep. And now that we've done one of Duncan's albums, the next 10 reviews will be technical death metal.
Well, you never know.
Well.
So thanks for checking out this review, guys. We'll be back with another review very soon. But until then, take care, and I'll speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.